If you really are connecting, they're looking you in the eyes.
Costa Rica, Costa Rica, Costa Rica.
So now, in your bio, as I'm looking at it, it says best-selling author, motivational speaker, that sort of thing. So obviously, this all surrounded your challenge with having brain cancer. And so did this happen in 2016, 2017?
It actually happened in 2013. Everything,
Wow, okay.
the story started earlier than that. And it's interesting when you go through these difficult times, you start to realize life through a different set of lenses. You start to have a better understanding and appreciation of the realities of what happened. I actually realized it started earlier in life.
Yep.
And it started for me when I was really about 15 years old. And I was 15, and that was the first experience that I had with cancer. My grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. She lived in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And my mother and my grandmother were like two peas on a pod. They were unbelievably close. They spoke every single day. Every weekend, we were either at their house in Fair Lawn, they were at my house in Parsippany, New Jersey, and they were just so close. And I remember that one day, she was Grandma Harriet.
Yep.
The next day, she was wearing a cancer turban, and the next day, she was gone. I wasn't old enough to understand it or digest
it. It was just like day and night over.
Yeah, and I look back, and I wish I could have been there more for my mom, because my mother was never the same person after that.
Sure.
She took so much pain and so much anguish, and life started to change. And I didn't really understand it, but I built this hatred up for cancer of what it did to our family, what it did to my mother. But I wasn't old enough to truly comprehend what actually happened.
Sure. Wow. And when did you get diagnosed? Tell me a little bit what happened there with you.
I got diagnosed in 2013, but prior to that, my father-in-law got diagnosed in 2010 with pancreatic cancer. He was 60 years old. My wife and my father-in-law were very similar to my mother and my grandmother. My wife had a very different upbringing than I did. I just mentioned I was from New Jersey. It's North Jersey, outside New York City. Mm-hmm. My wife grew up in mining country, Pennsylvania. My father was a financial advisor. My mom was a school teacher. My mother-in-law was a janitor, and my father-in-law was a highway construction worker. And they lived in a very small 500-foot row home. Mm-hmm. They were two completely conflicting and different upbringings. And I heard all this negativity about in-laws and problems. They were great people. I loved them. I mean, sure. My father-in-law liked to hunt. He liked to fish. He liked to fix things. I did none of that.
What is that about our society? And I don't know if it's anywhere else in the world. It may or may not be. I honestly don't know. But in our society, we grew up in the 70s and 80s understanding that your in-laws are supposed to be a pain in the ass.
Well, it's the shows, the Archie Bunker, the Jeffersons, all that kind of stuff. You watched it.
Is it just because it was a sitcom joke? Is that why?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because then you have this perception, and as different as we were, I didn't do any of the stuff that my father-in-law did. But we both just like to drink a beer and relax and watch baseball, and they were just great people. So 2010, he was 60 years old, and on Father's Day that year, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. My wife was pregnant with our third child. We had two children under 3. And all I saw her do was do everything she needed to do to be there for her dad. Mm-hmm. She never complained. She never bitched. She drove him down to University of Pennsylvania, which is a good 45-minute drive to the hospital down there. He had to get a Whipple procedure. He had to go through surgery. And then he had to go through chemo and radiation. And every day she would take him back and forth, pregnant, 2 kids, taking care of me. It was inspirational what I saw. It was the definition of what strength really is. Strength's not how big your arms are, how much you bench press. It's something that's deep down in your belly that at the deepest and darkest of times, we could find it, and we can grab it, we could own it, we could make it ours. It was inspirational. Mm-hmm. And my father-in-law, I remember him sitting down with me, and the reality is pancreatic cancer is a 7 to 8% survival rate. Usually lasts about 6 months. And I remember him saying to me, Matt, I'm going to be around for all my grandchildren to be born. And I want to be around long enough for all of them to have real memories of me. He was a warrior. It was amazing what I saw. He never complained. He was just like his daughter. He never bitched. It was, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take on the fight at hand. And cancer, unfortunately, is like a roller coaster. It goes up, it goes down, it goes left, it goes right. It does what it wants when it wants. It doesn't care about what anybody else's plans are. It doesn't care what their feelings are. It goes in the direction it feels like. 2013, he's hanging in there. His roller coaster's going all over the place. It was something that was an honor to be a part of. The fight that he put forward, looking out for his family.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2013, I was driving on a snowy, icy day on a miserable road called Route 202 in a town you're probably familiar with called Bridgewater, New Jersey. And I was heading up there, and there were all these fender benders all over the side of the road. I remember looking around being like, I don't feel like dealing with this today. I'm doing 25 miles per hour. I don't feel like it. And as I'm driving up to a traffic light at a road called Chubb Way, I hit my brakes and my car hydroplanes right into the car in front of me. Pulls the car, jumps, flies out, goes into the median, flips over. And I remember holding on to the steering wheel as the airbag went off, going, all the working out you do is for this right now. And I got out of the car without a scratch on my body.
Sure.
And the police come running over, and they're like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, beast mode, man. I'm good. I'm fitness, man. They said, you better go to the hospital. You got to get checked out.
Sure.
As a typical type A personality, I went, nah.
I'm good, man. Yeah.
I'm good. I'm cool. So I called my wife up, and my wife was actually shopping in the King of Prussia Mall in between having my father down at chemotherapy. And I said, Rebecca, the car's totaled. I'm okay. I'm fine. She goes, go to the hospital. You got to get checked out. I go, nah, I'm good. I'm going to rent a car. I'm going to go on my way to work. Type A. She said, don't forget about our friend Karen Mancini. We have a good friend of ours, Karen. She lives in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. And one day she's at a traffic light, and she's sitting at the red light, and a car comes flying down and T-bones her at the red light. Police come over. She's okay. They take her to the hospital, make sure she gets checked out. 3 hours later, doctor comes in and says, we want you to send a thank you note and buy flowers for the person that hit you. We just found a brain aneurysm. You would have been dead in 3 hours.
Wow.
I thought about my wife. I thought about my kids. And I rented a car and went on my way. That night I got home, and my head was killing me. Oh, I've never really had a headache badly before, possibly a hangover, but my wife suffers from chronic migraines.
Right.
So my father-in-law's on the couch, just got back from chemotherapy, and I'm sitting there going, oh, my head. My wife says to me, she goes, did you go to the hospital?
Fucking dick.
Yeah, right. I go, no. She goes, try getting chronic migraines, and walked upstairs. Over the next 2 weeks, the pain got more and more severe every single day. And it got to the point where I would fall asleep on the couch at 8:30.
Wait, you didn't go to the hospital the next day, dude?
No,
Fuck.
I know.
You're kidding me, dude.
The beast mode gets to you.
Fucking insane, dude.
I actually went and worked out every day. I never miss a day. Here's the crazy part I'm going to tell you is that the pain got so severe that I lost all ability to sleep. So I'd pass out at 8:30, wake up at 10 in this severe pain. And I'm going to tell you something very odd. When I would go work out, I kind of felt okay. I don't know if it was endorphins or what, but I'd be like, yeah. All right. And as I would walk back to the car, I'd be like, oh my God, my freaking head, what is going on? I must have banged my head in this car accident and don't remember it. It's got to go away at some point. So I basically speak professionally. I speak all over the place, share my story, perspective, all that kind of stuff. And in my business of finance, I speak all the time on the perception of being there when things are bad, giving people plans in advance of the negative, making sure that there's some semblance of hope and good news at these deep and dark times. So what happens is I'm giving a speech in the same town of Bridgewater, and I speak all over the place. Maybe there's 150 people in the room. And I go to make a point, and I turn to the PowerPoint, and I feel a hot flash hit me right in the face. And almost I didn't understand it. And then slur and gurgle poured out of my mouth.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't know where I was.
How many days after the accident was this?
That was about 2.5 weeks. It starts pouring out of my mouth. I don't know what's going on. I remember seeing myself standing outside my body going, you're having a stroke. You are having a stroke right now. I kind of got myself together. I was like, oh, all right. I have kids that are sick at home, haven't been able to sleep. Let's bounce back into this thing. Let's do this. And the funny thing is, the majority of people didn't catch on.
Your wife must love you.
Oh, yeah. It was only about 5 to 6 seconds long. That's the crazy thing. It felt like an eternity.
Sure. Wow.
I was freaked out of my mind.
Jesus
I really was. Over the next few months, I started to have them fairly frequently. So
are you kidding? Wait, hold on a second, man. Wait, actually, before we, you probably have my picture like can you move the picture so it's kind of in the center of the screen, like above your, so where you're looking is kind of
Oh yeah, of
above
course.
your mic because you're looking to your right, I think.
I
A
got
little
you.
bit. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Dude, that's insane, man. You're telling me you were in a freaking car accident, and for the next 2 weeks you had headaches every day, and
Yes.
you didn't go to the hospital?
No, there's nothing intelligent about that. There's nothing smart about that.
I mean, do you think there's something in you that just didn't want to face it? Like, do you think that that's maybe part of it? Like, you just
No, I
didn't
thought it
want
was
to.
something that I thought it was something that was going to go away.
Yeah.
I actually ended up going to a general practitioner, and I went maybe a week or so later. I was running on the towpath by the Delaware River, which is that beautiful scenic
Mm-hmm.
path you can take where you go over the covered bridges and all this. And my wife trained for runs a lot, and she went to, so I listen to music when I run. My wife likes to talk when she runs, so I like to put my headphones on and not talk to her while I'm running. And she asked me a question, and as I went to answer that question, I felt the hot flash hit me. And I had my fourth or fifth one of these seizures at that point, or
Jesus
strokes, I should say.
Christ.
And she's like, "What the hell? I asked you a question. Why aren't you answering me?" I'm like, "I just had another one of those things." That's why I
Dude,
went to
are
the
you,
doctor.
man? This is, you're fucking insane, dude.
Looking back on it, you obviously, when you put some retrospective in it, you're like, I probably
Yeah,
should have
man.
went a little bit earlier. But the good news for me was
Wow.
that when I went to the doctor, the general practitioner,
So she basically, after that run, she was like, "You're going to the fucking doctor now."
oh yeah. So I go to the doctor. They tell me it's sinus infections, all this other shit that I'm dealing with, and they tried to give me a lot of medication. We're going to give you Xanax to sleep. We're going to give you this, and I have no problem saying this. I was like, I don't take medicine. I
Yeah.
try to take nothing if I don't have to. I don't want to put that stuff in this temple right here. And I took it one night, and it was awful. I was in this haze the next day. It wasn't doing anything to help me. I said, I'm not doing this any longer. So over the next month and a half, I ended up having probably a total of 11 of these strokes. And I'll never forget, I was in Parsippany, New Jersey, giving a presentation in my hometown. And the 11th time I got one of these strokes, I felt the hot flash hit me. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. I finished my presentation, and maybe there's 300 people in the room.
What happened when that hit you and you like momentarily can't speak? You just like walk around. And just
Oh no,
take
it's a great question. At the first number of times, I didn't know what to do. Now I knew what to do. So I would turn and face the PowerPoint like I was trying to point something out, because I knew I had like 5 to 6 seconds to kill, which I know you're learning to just acclimate to the issue at hand.
It's amazing.
Right. So
The
that was
human ability to adapt.
that's right. That's exactly right. So that moment, I'm like, all right, I gotta go to the hospital. Something's really wrong. Maybe 30 hands go up. When you get 30 people to raise their hand at a big event that you're speaking at, that means people are in tune with you. They're listening. You're hitting their heartstrings in some fashion, and they want to ask you something. My head dropped. I was like, I answered one question. I'm like, I'm running late. I got to get going. I'm so sorry. People are coming up to me going, Matt, got a quick question for you. It's a great point you brought up, and this is going through my mind. If someone doesn't get away from me, someone's going on the ground. That is not me. That is not me. I get a couple of people walking me to my car. Matt, one quick question. That was a great point. I peeled out of the parking lot. That's not me. I called my doctor. I go, you told me you gave me all this medication. You told me I was having all these, blah, blah. I go, it's none of that. I hear him read some notes. He goes, you're not having a sinus infection. You got to get to the hospital right this second. So I called my wife up, who was again at the King of Prussia Mall in between chemotherapy for my father-in-law. Told her the deal, and we decided to meet at Capital Health, which is in Hopewell, right near where I live, right off 95. And that was an hour and a half drive of maybe it's no big deal. Maybe I'll be fine. Maybe I'm going to die. I don't know. This is getting to a point. It's been, it started in January, February. It's May 13th. It's May 14th right now.
Right.
So we get down there. I meet her in the parking lot. We walk in. And when we walk in, the doctor looks at me and says, we're going to do a CAT scan. We're going to check this. And I'm like, that's cool. CAT scan's like an x-ray. I'm good with that. So I lay down. They do a CAT scan. And 3 hours later, they come to me. They go, okay, we know the problem. I'm like, all right, let's diagnose it, fix it. Let's move on. Let's go. You have a lesion right here. Now, a lesion to me is a cut or a bruise.
Yep.
So the first thing I'm thinking is car accident. Fuck. God, I probably banged my head. I probably just don't remember it. It's causing massive pain. I'm like, dude, you don't know the half of it. That's what I said to him. He goes, it's also causing you not to sleep. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, Mr. Newman, you're not having strokes. You're having seizures on the left frontal lobe of your brain. That affects memory and speech. A lot of people think this sounds tough to listen to. I was like, yes, that's the issue. Like,
exactly. Let's get it.
What do we got to do to fix it? We're going to do an MRI, bing, 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 all this other stuff. Like, okay. So for 7 hours, I go in and out of the MRI booth. It's 3:00 in the morning. My wife looks at me and she goes, you got to do one more MRI and you got to do it with contrast. I want to go home. We live 5 minutes away. I'm going to make lunch for our kids who are 5 and under. I'm going to get my dad a ride to chemo. I'll be back by 5 in the morning. I go, take your time. I mean, I got to go sit in this booth for another hour. So woman comes in with a wheelchair, nurse, and goes, Mr. Newman, all right, you got to jump in the wheelchair. We got to take you down. I go, I just did the Broad Street run in Philly 8 days ago, 10-mile run. I don't need to get in the wheelchair. She goes, there's liability in the hospital. You got to get in the wheelchair. So I get in the wheelchair. She grabs the clipboard. She goes, all right, Mr. Newman, MRI. Now we got to do it with contrast. We need to see how big your brain tumor is. Oh. And I go, it was a lesion. And that's the moment at 39 I found out that I had brain cancer.
Wow. There you go, man. Jesus fuck. Wow. So did the accident have anything to do with this as far as they figure, or it triggered it or anything like that? Or they feel it was just there before and it kind of jiggled it loose? How does that work?
They think it had absolutely nothing to do with it in any way whatsoever. That was the moment I stopped believing in irony. I'm serious. They said nothing. We looked at it. I said it had to do so. It had to jiggle something. It had to. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, they might not know how that can happen, but obviously, dude,
there had to be some relation of some type, because that's when the pain really started, sure. Or it got severe enough where I noticed it more. But There was no turning back after that. And I remember they took me out of the tube. I was in it for an hour and a half. They brought me to my room. They plugged me into about 30 different machines. I just started to cry. And I had retrospective on my life. And I started to think about myself as a father. I started to think about, I had 3 kids under 5. I started to think about myself as a husband and a son and a friend. And my wife's got, her dad's dying of pancreatic cancer, and her husband had brain cancer. You get brain cancer, you're going to die. That's the general perception.
Right. Sure.
And I mentioned where strength really is. I saw that strength. I didn't know it existed. I grabbed it. I owned it. I made it mine. And I started to scream. I started to curse. Fuck this, fuck that. And the nurses come running in. They still tell the story to this day. And they go, are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine. That was my pity party. If I was going down, I was going down swinging. I didn't know I had that in me. It had nothing to do with how much great shape you're in and whatnot. It had to do with that deep-rooted ability to find strength. And I knew that if I could find it, it was mine. This was my journey. Cancer was just along for the ride. I was taking it, and it was not giving it back. And I didn't know that existed before then.
Wow. So that's it, man. Good podcast.
Oh, there's way more to that story. Because that's
yeah. I mean, I think, it's like we all face challenges, right? But when there's something that is much bigger than anything you're going to normally face in your day to day, right? Knock on wood, most of us, you don't have the terrible things happen to you typically until later in life. Or, okay, you lose a parent and this and that, but that's the cycle of life, and it's not a kid, right? And it's not, a 39-year-old man getting cancer, right? And so this is like, I don't know, everybody, you just pray you never have to deal with something like this, right?
You do. And I'll give you a different, I mentioned before I was in finance, and my father was a financial advisor. My uncle's in finance. My brother is. There were things that I learned at a very young age that didn't make sense to me till later in life. And one of the things that I practiced in the way I did it, and I was in wholesaling, meaning that I worked for companies that manufactured mutual funds, annuities, whatever it is. And then there's a middle person, a salesman that goes around to financial advisors and who's technically an advisor too, and has to show them the value, where you should use this, where you should use that, and position it. One of the things I did is I practiced everything I preached. Everything I ever talked about, I did. And I learned that from my father. And I learned that from the lessons I gathered over life, that having a plan in place prior to the negative allows you to focus on what you need to and take on that fight at hand rather than have regret, resentment, negativity, all these other things that come. And there was a lot of it I didn't want to do. I remember right before my first son, Luke, was born. And my dad sat down with me. He goes, house in the suburbs, you moved from the city, married, about to have your first child. What do you say every day to your clients? Our job is to be there when things are bad. Our job is to give people good news when they need it the most. Our job is to have a plan that gives some type of semblance of positivity when people need it. He goes, do you do everything you say? I go, yes, I do. He goes, did you do your will? Well, Dad, did you do your power of attorney?
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
And he looks at me and goes, so are you doing everything you say?
Right. Sure.
I went, Dad, you know what? I'm about to take on more responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm about to be a father.
Yeah.
And I went and did all the little basics. This has nothing to do with your wealth,
Yeah.
nothing to do with the amount of money you have. It's to alleviate burdens. I'll never forget laying in a hospital bed, and I'm waiting for my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and my parents to come to the hospital. And I know the deal. Your son has brain cancer. He's going to die. And I turned to Rebecca and I go, hey, hon, give me the iPad. She goes, yeah, they'll be here in 20, 25 minutes. You want to watch a movie or something? I go, just give me the iPad. And I'm stuck to a million machines. And the first thing I did is I pulled up my will. Then I pulled up my power of attorney. I pulled up my life insurance. And I'll never forget sitting there going, every speech I ever gave was actually for me. And it was about me. And it allowed me to go, check, check, check. What's next? Surgery? Okay, we got to do a craniotomy. You got to cut half my head off. Chemo, radiation, because I had the ability to focus on what I had to focus on and not turn into this downward spiral of negativity because I said I woulda, coulda, shoulda. And that was the moment that I took on, that I did what I needed to do to take on the battle that I was just going to be confronted with.
Yeah. I when we lost our father, he had now he was not any sort of prepared like you're talking about, but thankfully, in his infinite wisdom, I wouldn't say he was prepared, but he had just on one piece of paper kind of written out all the bank accounts, all the insurance, all the this and the that for whatever. He probably just wrote it to keep track of it himself, right?
Sure.
But it was sitting in a desk drawer, and we found this piece of paper. And like that sort of little thing, when your family needs it, right?
That's right.
It's absolutely critical. Like we would have spent weeks trying to unravel that ball of yarn.
And think about probate and think of all these other things that could come into play. I am never going to sit here and tell someone to do with their money.
Yep.
But basic planning, I actually did a TED talk, and I pointed out that the U.S. education system is flawed. We prepare people for the real world. We train them nothing on what's an employee benefit. When you have children, what should you select at your company? Little basics that people could check boxes on so when negativity happens, they could focus on the positive because it's taken care of. We show them how to get jobs, but we don't tell them what a 401k is or just basic stuff. And I was privileged this was my career, this was my passion, to check the boxes that I did. And I believe that was a big component in me taking on the fight that I fought.
Yep. It's funny you talk about like the will, because we did that. I'm down in Costa Rica, right? And actually, like people had told us, hey, even my lawyer, well, I have several lawyers, but one of my lawyers was like, dude, you got to get a will. When we had our kid, he was like, you got to get a will. And I was like, why? Our stuff's in corporations and the shares just transfer. He's like, no, you got to get a will. Because here in Costa Rica, like it all just goes like straight into if it's not like in a will, it's like goes to the court, and 6-8 months later, you might have it squared away.
And think of now the legacy that is being left to the family, the problems, the issues, the memories. The passing of someone now turns into it was a pain in the ass.
Huge pain.
Instead of the grieving process. That's what I try to explain to people is it's not just about for you. It's about the legacy that you're leaving to your family, that you put them first. Yeah. And it's not about what investment should I do? It's basic planning like you were just mentioning.
Yeah. It's you know what it is? It's just one of these things. It's like I paid like our yearly car. They have a car fee every year. It's called the Marchamo here. And it's just such a pain, It's just such a pain, but there's certain things where, like, obviously you're a dude who exercises and stuff. You just got to be like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. And then you check it. You just do it, and, and then when it's done, it's like putting off writing the term paper or something, you put it off. And I'm the ultimate this way. I'm the ultimate procrastinator. And when I finally do the fucking paper,
Yeah.
it's like the greatest relief of all time. You know what I
It's a
mean?
weight off your shoulders.
Weight off the shoulders.
You feel good. And I could say I was similar to that going through college and whatnot too, but I also felt that the premise of having things done alleviates questions on, oh no, did I do this?
Mhm.
And little types of things that will prevent you from having the stress taken off your shoulders. Everything that I'm referring to here was simply what I was just trying to do is I was taking on more responsibility. I was going to practice everything I preach. But what I also noticed is that when you take on something serious, whether it's a disease, whether it's a life-altering event, you start to look at life differently. It's like you're given a new set of lenses, and two things can happen. You can go through that process and you can revert back to old ways, or you can take from what happened to you. I always say, this is my journey. Cancer is just along for the ride, like I was mentioning. I take gifts from it. And some people it rubs them really. You're taking a gift from cancer. It's going to be with me. Why am I going to let that thing win? Whatever I can take from it, I'm going to take it, I'm going to own it, and I'm going to use it to my advantage. Otherwise, cancer wins. My legacy will never be defined by cancer. My legacy will be defined by me, because if I just allow cancer to be the thing that I'm known for, cancer wins. That's not how it works. I'm using that to be better, to pay it forward, to help people, to put them in a better perspective, to inspire. And I will always take that's from me, that I took from that.
Wow. So for you, okay, now you've got me thinking, like, on this idea of getting, like, we're talking about big things, right? Will planning, estate planning, those sort of things. But how do you I think of my kid, right? And my kid, just to get him motivated enough to feed the dogs, right? How do you build the muscle for you? And there's different people do it different ways. And I know for me, thank God I'm different than I was when I was 20. Because when I was 20, I would procrastinate everything till it was like right on the verge of, breakdown. And then I'd do something, no maintenance, no anything. For me, there were a couple things that really changed my life. The first thing, I don't know what it was, what book or whatever. And the dude was, whatever it was, he said, look, if something is less than 5 minutes for you to do, and it comes to your mind, like washing the dishes, you do it immediately. That never goes on a list. It never goes to later. It never goes to anything. And just that, doing that for me, that was like a life-changing, like a light bulb moment. But just that for me, anything when something comes to my mind, that changed the way I approach the world almost. Now I still procrastinate like heck, but I there are certain things I've gotten better, believe it or not, over time. But for you, what would be what's like when you look back at, 12-year-old you and turning into adult, what was it that started working for you to get you into that get it done kind of mentality and way of being?
That's a great question, because there were certain things I procrastinated as well too. I mean, listen, we all had that time when, you had your clean clothes put on your bed and you still slept in the bed anyway and refused to put them away. I mean, anybody says they didn't do that, I'm like, I ain't buying it. We've all been there. Every one of us. Then your mom came in and, what the hell are you doing? Right. I did put that right over there for you. And you just didn't want to do it. For me, I think everything really started to change from my perspective when I started my career.
Mm-hmm.
College, you're kind of the same way, you're smart enough where you can get everything done and take care of it, no problem. And I loved being at the University of Delaware, but didn't have to put all the study time in and didn't have to go there. So kind of limited to yourself. But I noticed that once I graduated and started my career, I had this passion that I wanted to be the best. I didn't want to be okay. I didn't want to be a guy working for this company. I'm going to be the guy. And when I first started, I remember going to an event. I was like 23 years old. And the top people in my industry were all told to wear a tuxedo. And everybody else had to wear a suit. And I remember that first year, I'm wearing a suit. I'm this young kid, and there's all these seasoned veterans for 20, 30 years up there. And I'm looking around going, I'm never wearing a suit ever again. I will wear a tux, and they're going to give me the award as the number one guy in this industry. And 2 years later, I got that. The following year, I wore a tux. And I realized in order to do that, I had to be great at my craft. I had to practice everything I preached, but I had to use what got me my scholarship to soccer, which was my work ethic. And I had to put those in play. And when that work ethic translated to success in career, which translated also financial difference from what I was used to,
100%. Yeah.
there was no turning back. So it really, for me, was that starting of the career going, to do this right, I got to incorporate these things all together. And I think if someone tried to explain that to me, it wouldn't work. You almost had to go through it yourself and find what you do well.
So tell me, okay, you mentioned soccer. So you were obviously very good at soccer. So for me, my brain goes, oh, that's where you got your work ethic.
Probably.
Sports, right?
I think baseball more, but soccer was what I played in college.
But through sports in some way. And so it's kind of just to get back to the kids thing, because my kid's 13, right? And doesn't have it yet, right? And doesn't have that work ethic where something is hard, you don't necessarily give up on it if it's something you've committed to, right? How would you, I'm looking for advice here.
Yeah.
How would you instill this into your kids? What would you do?
That's a great question. And I can actually share something that you're going to relate with. So my oldest son, Luke, is 12. His best friend on the planet is your nephew. So they both were playing on a soccer team and a travel soccer team. And they were good. Soccer team was good. Mm-hmm. I could see Luke didn't love soccer anymore. And I saw there's some perception of a child where they just complain. They don't want to go to practice. They don't want to do this. But then they go and they're having the greatest time ever.
I know, dude. It's always, man.
Yeah, and it drives you nuts because then they never want to leave.
Yeah.
So Luke really started to get good at baseball, which was my first love as well too. And I should have done that in college. But when they offer you money to go to school, I was like, well, I'll take that one right there.
Sure.
And he started to really want to play. And I remember one day he looks at me and goes, Dad, I don't want to play soccer anymore. I saw it in his eyes. I saw it in his face. And he said, but I really want to play baseball. And I never had to say, Luke, get ready for baseball. He's waiting there. Last night, Jake had baseball practice indoors. I had to go with him and pitch to him for an hour and a half. And he was just like, I saw that when it's something that he loved, the passion was there. So I think we have to find that thing for us. And sometimes we find it going through different circumstances. A passion of mine now is writing. I never wrote in my life before I got sick. And then what I found is you have to find an outlet and a catharsis. Mm-hmm. You have to find something for all the optimism, the appreciation of life, the sharing of my perspective and these lessons that I took. There's going to be fear and anxiety when you go through something that could come back at any given time. You have to find that out. So sometimes our passions change. For me,
100%, yeah.
When I started my career, I really couldn't play sports anymore. And the reason I couldn't play is I said, I'm going to outwork everybody. So my sport became fitness because fitness was on my schedule when I wanted to go. There was no be at the field at 6:00 for a game.
Yep.
Fitness wasn't my passion before that. Since I'm 23, it's absolutely one of my favorite things in life to do. And some people don't want to do it. I love doing it. And then writing became a passion. So I think we're often put on a path that you kind of got to buy into and follow.
Yeah. What motivated you to actually write the book about your experience? What was the thing that was like, did you just start writing? And when you're writing, well, let's start with that. What motivated you to do it?
Yeah. So what I used to do is once I got diagnosed with cancer, I came back. I was supposed to be in the hospital for about a week. So I was in the hospital for 4 days before the surgery. Surgery happened on a Friday. I 100% attribute health and wellness to being able to get operated on Friday, and I left on Sunday. And my perspective started to change immediately. I came home and my 3 kids, I had a second head. I was a mess. My 3 kids were holding signs that say, I love you, Daddy. Thank you for coming home. I started crying. I went upstairs. I slept in my own bed, and home is where the heart is. I started to see life differently. I started to have a different appreciation. And all of a sudden, I started to send emails out. So I remember 2 days later, I was pouring my heart out into this email. Your brother has a copy of it. And I was sending this email on my perspective and my understanding of life, my appreciation of the moment, living in the now. I don't care about tomorrow. I don't care about yesterday. There's one moment now. And I would send the email out and never read it. It was catharsis. It was like I vomited. I got it out of my system. And I started doing these every time I would feel stress. A few years into it, there were 20,000 people that were following my emails.
Oh, you were doing like an email, like a group email kind of blast or something.
It's what I get every day. Hey, Matt, could you put my brother-in-law on this? He went through it. Matt, could you put my friend on this? They've been through something similar. And I started to realize that cancer and disease were like buying a car. You buy a car, you leave the lot, you go, oh my God, I see the car all over the place. Wrong. The car was always there. You never noticed it till you had a direct connection to it. That's what happened to me with cancer. One day I looked up and I went, holy shit, it's everywhere. It affects everybody. So I would start sending these emails out, but I was doing them for me. I wasn't writing them for anybody. And I never once sat down and said, let's put one together. Something had to happen. I was in the hospital. I got bad news, something here and there. So after all these people
started, it was kind of like just a kind of current event, kind of this happened, and then you wanted to get something out and talk about it, and that was kind of what
I just needed to get something off my chest to make myself feel better. That's it. Never sat down with a plan. Something had to. And so I remember being in hospitals. Hey, we got to check this. We're not sure about this. And I would just grab my computer and start going like. It made me feel better. It became my outlet. And I started to write a book because so many people were following me on this, and I was touching them, and I was meeting people all over the world now. So I started to write a book to share my story. And the book came out on March 23rd, 2018. And I called my mom up in Parsippany, New Jersey. I go, hey, Mom, the book's coming out tonight. And she said this to me over the phone. You know no one's going to buy it, right?
Yes!
I am not making that. I said
that is so fucking awesome.
I did this I've done a couple TED Talks. I did this at a TED Talk she was at, and she stood up and goes, this is a true story. This is this. And you want to hear what I said to her after that? I looked at her, I go, oh God, no. Who gives a shit about what I have to say right there? She goes, but you're going to put 3 copies in your safe. And that way, when your kids are old enough, they'll be able to read what really happened. I go, yeah, Mom, that's it. And 1 week later, we were #1 on Amazon in 4 different categories. And I went, holy shit. The reason I think it did so well, there was no business plan. There was no expectation. I did it for myself. I did it because of me. And then I realized people are attracted to realness and honesty. They're sick of the shtick, the sales crap. They want to be connected with someone that they know. I'm on that journey. I've been on a similar path. I'm connected. People want inspiration. They're sick of the canned crap that they hear all the time. And the great thing about it is I didn't try it for that. I did it because it made me feel better.
Yeah, that's fantastic, dude. No, I think there's zero doubt about people are, I mean, as a culture, I think we're done with the shtick idea, that whole fakeness, and people will fight me on it, but I'm like, look, I mean, I'm not going to get political on this, but I'm like, dude, there's a reason this dude won. Because this dude was straight, like my brother would be straight, like I would be straight. This is a change. Our previous hundreds of years of presidents were all perfectly put together, perfect wife, perfect everything. And we've all recognized that in the background, they were doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and they were crazy just like the rest of us. This is the first dude who was like, this is me. And we were like, yes.
And you know what's funny? Regardless,
half the country was like, yes.
Well, regardless of political affiliation, I'll leave all that out. What I think the country said, and I'm not taking anybody's side on this, is what I think the country says, we want to change.
Yep.
We don't want the typical politician. We want a person, whether it's good, bad, and different, that anybody can take their views on any of that. But change does 2 things. And this is one of the things I talk about a lot in speeches that I give all over. Change breeds complacency, or change breeds opportunity. Mm-hmm. How do you look at it? I looked at the change in my life as, instead of having a woe is me, it was, no, I'm going to take advantage of this in some fashion. Listen, there's some diseases that are going to take us physically. They will never define our legacies. We own that. If we allow the diseases to define our legacy, we give in to the disease. But there are some diseases that we have the opportunity to fight, and having that ability to not have that regret and resentment I talked about. But will you change for the lessons that disease gave you? And the example I use is, we all know someone who was overweight, they lost 200 pounds, and then 3 years later, they gave it all back. I will never give back the gifts that I was given to pass on and share and let others know, if I could do this, so can you. And I still deal with stuff. I still get tests every 5 months, MRIs. And you know what? Fuck it. This is my life. I'm not going to turn it over and sit there and worry about it all the time. I'm going to leave legacies for my children the best that I possibly can.
Wow. What do you say, though, to the average man? Okay. Who isn't it? Look, I can tell. I can look at you, man. I know you work out, right? And I think, honestly, physically, it's just when I follow these guys on, I don't know if you know him, David Goggins, right? David Goggins wrote this book, Can't Hurt Me. This dude, this is the stories. 300 pounds, he joins the military, goes, ultra marathon, super, and what you're talking about, obviously, and he has, the average man like me, we're fighting to get there, right? And so we're looking for ways, and I do believe it's like a muscle you build over time. It's not something you just flip a switch and have, right? And so your background, sports, entering a competitive marketplace when you got your first career or your first job, and realizing and recognizing, I'm going to go for this, and then doing all of the 10,000 steps necessary to actually break through, become a super producer. Is it as simple as you just begin making the steps, you just start doing, and you just commit yourself? Is that your kind of philosophy when you're teaching your kids, like how to get through stuff, how to do things, how to set goals and go for them? And what do you tell your kids? How can the average person, do what you do?
Everybody is different. I use a foolish analogy, but my favorite baseball player growing up was Don Mattingly on the New York Yankees. Nobody's ever going to teach anybody Don Mattingly's batting stance, but it worked really well for him. That was what he found. It's interesting because I find with my children, you want to treat them so good and you want to spend time with them. But my father taught me a lesson that I give him tons of credit for. He said, there's no free lunches. Go out and earn it. I'm blessed to have my wife. She's the strongest person I've ever met. She's taken care of 2 people with cancer, young kids. But my wife was also in that situation growing up where she worked all the time. She worked full-time through college. She worked full-time through high school. She paid her own bills. Nobody did anything for her. She has that salt of the earth mentality behind her, where you combine my work ethic, we're both into fitness, we're all into this, but the way she had to provide for herself. It's a very good combination to teach our children. And listen, we get upset sometimes because, I'm like, oh my God, look how good our kids have it and all this other stuff. And just like we all do. Or, I used to walk to school uphill both ways.
Exactly.
Look at these kids. They take a bus every day.
Literally,
And,
exactly.
It's the truth. But I think one of the things I try to instill in them is that there's no free lunches. They like to play sports. You got to work at it. Yeah, I know you're good at it. But guess what? Someone's working harder than you are. I don't care if you're a professional athlete. That's a lesson that I want them to carry over to their regular life as well, too.
Mm-hmm. As I'm listening to your story now, and it's all starting to make sense. The idea of why you didn't go to the doctor earlier or whatever, that's not your mindset. That's not you. You're a guy who goes through it, dude. No way. I got a headache. Tough shit. I'm going into work. This is what I'm doing. This is
and there's a fault to that, too.
To a fault. I mean, to a fault where it could have cost you your life, right?
Absolutely.
But at the same time, that's also the power that probably got you through it. And it's the thing that allows you to keep going. I mean, dude, if there's one thing that I could give to my son and just hand it to him, it's that kind of grit and determination.
I agree with you.
It's the thing, I don't know, my quote kind of under my Twitter for the longest time was just that a person with drive is the most influential thing in the world. It's the thing that changes this world and molds it, right?
That's a great quote.
And there's no doubt about it. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be wealthy or anything. But if you have that drive and passion for something, You can literally do whatever you want. I mean, that's my core belief. You literally can. And especially in today's world. Today's world is so magical. Our kids, we recognize it. They are so blessed with opportunity. I mean, we're blessed. We're blessed to be around right now. Look at me. I'm talking to you. We're on the other side of the world from each other. You know, this is magical. We're reaching people live all over the world. It's freaking magic, right?
It is magic, and it's also attraction. Not to interrupt, but if you think about it, what are people really looking for? There's a reason something like this becomes prevalent. There's a reason people listen to certain podcasts and they don't listen to the radio any longer. There's a reason they buy certain books. They share them with friends and family members, because when something hits that home for them and gives them that extra drive, gives them that inspiration, to me, that's real. And that's what people are really looking for now. They're looking for something that connects with them on a real. They're not looking for some actor to tell them why they should drink some type of coffee or something like that who's getting paid for it. They want something where someone has no dog in the fight and they're giving them their honest feedback. And honesty is 100% addicting when you start sharing it with others.
Yeah, man, you're right, dude. God damn.
Don't tell me. My wife will tell you I'm wrong a lot. I got to more than
Well, this is the thing that goes along with it, isn't it? When you have this kind of strong personality, trust me, we have it in our house too. It can cause some conflict.
It can, that is true, but it's often something that I think you also know you can walk away from really easily, and it's not a big
Well, I mean, that's what, look, I think at the core, people are attracted to people who have passion, have belief, you know, are working for something. I mean, this is what, it's so funny. Like, as I look back on my life and where I am now and where I was when I was 20, it's a completely different person. Like, when we moved to Costa Rica, I literally was like, how can I not work at all? What's the way I can just work zero? Is there a way? Like, I moved here specifically, look, can I find a house for $20,000 on the beach where I can buy the house, own it outright, and work 1 hour a week? Is that possible? Like, that
sounds
goal.
great, by the way, but I don't think I can do it.
It did sound at that time like it was literally like I wanted to do that. Now that's like if I wanted to do, I could probably do that right now if I wanted to, right? I don't want that anymore. I want to actually, you know, I'm at the age where I'm looking to do something that actually like fills something for me,
And
creates like a legacy, like you're talking about.
You're probably also, you're finding a different appreciation and satisfaction of contributing to society.
100%, yeah.
And that's something you have to go through time to take that one. I didn't get that at a younger age.
No,
and then
no way.
When I started to get messages from people I've never met, thank you, I needed to read your book, I needed to hear your TEDx, I needed to hear this, it allowed me, and you realized things happen for a reason. And a lot of these lessons we're learning, if we take them the right way, they're making us all better people. And I didn't get that before. I have clarity on it now.
Yeah. Yep. No, you just have to go through stuff or through time or whatever. I mean, part of what I've done with the podcast and what it's allowed me to do is people will just contact me, you know. And now I've set it up where it's easy. They can like click a link and book a session with me. It used to be like emails and all this sort of stuff and chats and all this sort of thing, where basically they just want to talk for 20 minutes, 30 minutes about Costa Rica. They're thinking of moving here or whatever it may be.
By the way, I did go there on my honeymoon. I got to throw that out. I did.
Where'd you guys go when you were here?
Trying to remember. We went to
Tamarindo.
We were near Tamarindo. We did go to Tamarindo Beach. You know, the Jersey Shore surfers in us. We got to go check that out. We got to go check that out over there. But we loved Costa Rica. We had an absolutely wonderful time. It was my honeymoon. It's one of my best memories.
Yep. No, it's fantastic. But just to get back to that, but the point of being able to help somebody by having a 20-minute conversation or a 30-minute conversation or whatever, it's so satisfying. It doesn't even, like, I've had dozens of these over the last year just to help people. And it's thrilling. Like it really is. It's thrilling to actually know that you help that person either get down here or be like, oh boy, that's not going to work for me. But either way, to help them is fantastic.
I think there's
I didn't learn that till my 40s. You know.
I'll tell you something interesting, Adam, and I've now had it happen enough where it's become relevant to me. There's no monetary value to doing certain things that define who you are. And I have no problem saying this. When I first started my career and all this, I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to live a good lifestyle. I wanted to do all this. Well, you know what? That really won't dictate how my kids remember me. They'll remember how much I loved them. They'll remember the certain memories that we had. And I'll give you a point. So I speak all over the country now, and I get hired by companies and all these different things to come and share my perspective and share my story and share the necessity of planning with people on how to connect closer with their clients and all this kind of stuff like that. And I got the first big one I got signed to was speaking in front of a few thousand people in Westgate in Las Vegas. And I could tell you in the old days before I got sick, I'm speaking at a big event. Let's go to Vegas. I'll go to the thing they do after, and I'll sign some books and we'll have a good time right there. I took my two sons, and they were young, and I put them in the green room. And I spoke, got a standing ovation. I killed it. And I could have stayed there after and sold a lot of books and signed them. I walked back in the green room. I grabbed my two children, and we jumped on a plane, and we went to Park City so I could spend time with them. And we can go skiing together. Well, we snowboard, actually. Got to throw that one out there.
Wait. You snowboard?
Oh, yeah.
You wear a helmet, right?
Oh, 100%. I've snowboarded for 20 plus years. 100%. We've had those situations. But
the first time I snowboarded, caught an edge, man, went back like a second.
Oh, man. We're actually, it's something we love to do. We were just setting up us going away again. But it was one of those things where it wasn't about the trip to Vegas. It was about inspiring people, sharing, helping them have better connections with family, friends, clients. But then it was about my children. I wouldn't have done that in the past. I'm not giving that lesson back. That was a gift I took from cancer.
That's fantastic. When did you get into actually doing the public speaking? Were you, for your business, were you doing speeches before?
Yeah, so I was always speaking on finance, and that was it. It was just something that I was good at, and I knew I was good at. It was easy. There was no canned speech. I didn't have anything written. You speak from the heart. You speak from the stomach. You share that with people, and they can tell. You don't talk about inverted yield curves and crap that nobody cares about. You share about connection. Yeah. So when I wrote my book, I started to have people say, hey, will you come speak? Your story is amazing. And I've heard you do it. It's amazing. I'm like, okay. So it was like a band. I would go play small venues of 30, 40 people. The reactions would be amazing. People would be crying. I'd sign books. And what I found was that my catharsis was to get it off my chest and talk about it. Most people only want to share it with someone who's going through it. And I would sit there for hours. I would hug people, and it was overwhelming. And I felt like I was doing this great thing for people. And it was great for me too, because that became my new catharsis, talking. And then you go to the arena and you start speaking in front of a few hundred people. Then you go to the next level and you're speaking in front of thousands of people. And it was something that I took a craft and an art that I knew I was very good at. And now I was sharing my honest beliefs and story and explaining nothing but what was in my heart. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even a challenge. It was easy and it was real.
Tell me the level of excitement or thrill moving from 30 to 40 people to a couple thousand people. Is it the exact same feeling, or is there a real jolt of excitement going into the larger venues?
It's different. I'll tell you that.
I've always felt like if I had the balls to do it, like right now, if you told me to do that, I'd literally have a heart attack right here. Because like literally, I don't know, I've never told you, but like starting this podcast, part of that was to just I was so scared of being in front of a camera even. It was terrifying to me. So part of the doing the podcast was to actually begin this kind of coming out of getting past my fears. Right?
No, that's smart. You were taking on a challenge from a new perspective.
Right. So, but I could see how being in front of and I do get a thrill like talking to people or whatever. I could see how it would be like addictive being in front of large groups like that.
I'm going to share an interesting thought on that. I like all of them. And let me explain what I mean. So one time I gave this speech and get a standing ovation. It's about 4,000 or 5,000 people. And I finished the meeting and the woman who organized it comes up to me. She goes, oh my God, you just killed it. And I go, yeah, I'm kind of tough on myself, but I think it was good. She goes, you just got a standing ovation in front of like 4 or 5,000. Are you out of your, what do you mean? She goes, how do you know you kill it? I go, what do you mean? She goes, how do you know? I go, you really want to know? She goes, yeah. I go, the majority of speakers, when they get up there, this is how people look. They want to say they saw.
So it's the iPhone test.
It's what it is. They don't give a rat's ass about what that guy's talking about.
Sure.
Stupid PowerPoint that he's doing, flipping through slides and a bunch of crap that they're supposed to write notes on.
Yeah.
He goes, what do you mean? I go, here's what I mean. You know how I know when people hit it? This is that. Because you hit him in the spot. So here's what's interesting. She sends me pictures from this, and it was a huge thing. And they had a professional photographer, and all the pictures of the crowd, people were like this staring. She goes, oh my God, you were right. But here's the interesting part. When you get on the really big stages, there's so much lighting. It's hard to see.
You can't see them, right? Yeah.
I always like going back and throwing in a small room and walking around and seeing it, just because it's more personal. And it's funny. A person brought this up to me the other day, of which I like better. I go, I like the bigger ones better. I mean, you get to affect more people. I go, but where would you rather see a band? You want to see him
That's right.
Meadowlands, or do you want to see him at like the Fillmore? Man, I want to see him in the Fillmore in like a bar. I go, I kind of get it now. Yeah. You know, I do. You want to see him in that smaller, more personal venue, and then you can go talk to people more. So because of what I talk about, I'd be remiss if I didn't say how much I still do enjoy that.
Yeah.
But I don't do them as much as I used to.
Yeah. But it's nice though, because you get that nice personal connection afterwards.
Really do.
Or whatever.
You're really, it's very true.
Oh man. Maybe I should get into public speaking, man.
You know, there's a pro and a con to it. For the person who is just doing it for the money, you could tell. The person who's doing it from the heart, money is just something they get on top of doing something that they're passionate about. Unfortunately, it's very apparent as far as I'm concerned, because I've spoke with so many different other people, and I could see when someone doesn't know how to correlate to the audience. And I always pull it out. You're a great speaker. It's very simple. You're a quarterback who calls an audible at the line of scrimmage. You look at the room and you go, okay, we got to go in this direction. Too many people have canned stuff. They can't do it.
Yeah.
It becomes obvious.
How do you custom? So if you're talking to different groups, how do you customize kind of what you're saying to them?
Well, first thing I'll do is I'll talk to the event planners. What do you want me to talk about? I have nothing canned. I go up there and everything is from the heart. Everything is from
literally, you don't, okay, it's the realtors convention or whatever, and you're going up there. You don't, okay, lay out what you're going to talk about and PowerPoint it out and do all that sort of stuff. No
PowerPoint. There's one slide, and it's a big picture of the cover of my book, but not my book. And it's the message that's on the back of my shirt, which says, be badass every day. And I got sick 8 days after the Broad Street run in Philly, like I mentioned. Now we run it every year to raise money. We raise money for the National Brain Tumor Society, for Head for the Cure. So I always get asked, I got to get that shirt. That shirt's great. I'm like, we don't really sell the shirts. That's just the cover. That's the cover of the book. But I want all eyes on me. Like I was mentioning earlier, you got that PowerPoint up there. I can pretend I'm looking at that, but I'm really going, I wonder how many blades of grass are on my front lawn right now. I wonder how many lights are in the ceiling. We get caught up on this. This is awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me. And things happen for a reason, because think of the connection of how we met right now, too. Amazing, because I'm probably going to have to call your brother after this and tell him about that.
Thanks so much for joining me, bro. I really
absolutely my pleasure. Awesome anything I could
I'm fired up, dude. I'm fired up right now. I didn't even need the coffee, man. You got me worked up tonight, man. Good talking to you, brother.
Great talking to you, man. Thank you so much.